012, and it gives me 1,250 feet. Exit.
Announced the arrival of the flight from Los Angeles and Chicago.
Explosion.
And welcome everybody to this May 24th, 2016 edition of T and Z Talk. I'm Tony Trupiano, the T in T and Z. He is Richard Zombek, the Z in T and Z, where we'll answer the question today: how did Michelle Fields get a Huffington Post paid gig, and Richard Zombek not? Good. I guess Corey Lewandowski didn't twist your arm and bruise your tender ego.
No, I guess not. And I wasn't writing for Breitbart before. Yeah, I saw that yesterday, and I was like, really? How about that?
It is interesting, no question about it. I saw her on Chris Hayes very briefly last night, where she sounded very much like a Hillary Clinton supporter, understandably, although she is an avowed Republican and conservative. I can understand why she might be, I don't know, a little jaded towards Donald Trump and the Republican Party right now. I think I would be as well.
Yeah, I was more questioning. I don't know. I guess the thought was in my head. How do you go from Breitbart to Huffington Post?
Money, money,
right?
money, money.
And it's not so much why.
Money. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just singing money. That's all.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing, right? How do you change completely the way you write and think? I get it, but has this permeated every single industry and part of our life, that it's all about money? Because, I mean, you and I have said, too, I mean, we could do a Rush Limbaugh type show, you know? We could
Some
do
would say we do.
A highly... I mean, I've always said if I was writing, pro-conservative, pro-business, pro-bank stuff, I'd be swimming in money. My wife has said that to me. She said, if you could just be a little bit more of an a-hole, we'd be super rich.
Well, and I know I shared with you some time back the story about years ago, this is 20 years ago, where I was approached by a huge Second Amendment advocacy organization, not the NRA, to paint my stripes red. And if I did, I would be handsomely compensated for that loyalty. And after being flown to a Western state and listening to what they had to say after they put me up at a fancy hotel with an expense account, etc., I ended up telling them no. My life, of course, would have been exponentially different had I had said yes to that offer. No question about it.
Yeah, I got to start, I don't know. You start wondering if there's if there's something wrong with us. I mean, everyone else seems to be doing it with really no problem.
Well, maybe 20 years ago it wasn't fashionable to do that. And actually 20 years ago I wasn't a political talker. 20 years ago, I was doing basically general topic radio, so I could have easily made that switch and not have been seen as being a traitor. The problem is when we sat down and started talking about some of the 20-year ago issues, it was clear to me, as I was being a very good listener and not a very good talker on purpose, that there was no way I could wrap my mind around what they were saying, Z. I couldn't literally wrap my mind around it. I couldn't justify. I'm saying to I remember sitting in this really nice conference room with these really plushy chairs and, drinking really expensive coffee and all that happy horse hucky. And, there were these beautiful pastries on the table and all that stuff. And I remember saying to myself, yeah, I just don't believe any of what you're saying.
Yeah, it's I don't know, Tony. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think some people can sell their souls, and I don't know. I mean, you know, I've done some writing for not political, but for some pretty boring topics just because it paid, and you know, it still required a couple showers afterwards.
Yep, and that's putting it very kindly. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting that Michelle Fields found her way to a new home, getting paid to do something that Huffington Post expects you to give away. Does that make you a writing hoe? I don't know about that. I wouldn't go that far, but I think it's disgusting. And, you know, and maybe you don't want to go there. Maybe we should just leave it alone. But I'm offended on many different levels. Well, let me finish my thought here. In support of you and your similar colleagues, some of the best, if not the best writing on the Huffington Post comes from people that don't get paid to write what is produced there. And at a very visceral level, I find that disturbing. As a pro-union guy, I find that unconscionable. And as a human being, I find it sinful. And now you can shut your mouth and move on, or you can comment. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to deal with that.
Well, I will comment because there was an article in the New Statesman. When was this? Back in February. And the question to a HuffPost editor in the UK was about why he doesn't pay his writers. And this is what it says. And there's a caption before it that says, and this is the answer Hull apparently loves to give. And this is Stephen Hull, the editor-in-chief of Huffington Post UK. Quote, if I was paying someone to write something because I want to get advertising, that's not a real authentic way of presenting copy. When somebody writes something for us, we know it's real. We know they want to write it. It's not been forced or paid for. I think that's something to be proud of. And then it goes on to say, yes, a man who literally made a career out of being paid to write and edit says this. So, you know, there are kind of two schools of thought on this. And, you know, I get what he's saying is, you know, we get people that really want to write and really want to write what they're writing about. And if they were just getting paid to write, we don't know what kind of quality we'd get because they would just be writing for the advertisement. However, that assumes that you're saying to that writer, this is what I want, this is what I want you to write, and this is how I want you to write it. Whereas if you simply place people, like here's the thing, right? There are about 6,000 bloggers on Huffington Post. All of them write for free. All of them get published. But they don't all get published on the front page, right? And I'm not saying I'm like Mr. Wonderful or anything, but the majority of my articles, I'd say 98% of them get published on the front pages and get read by a lot of people because of that. So if I were to get compensated and other bloggers were to get compensated by, let's say, a percentage of the advertising dollars that they bring in, I would most likely get more. And I would get more because I'm placed on the front pages. And I get placed on the front pages because my writing is of a quality that deserves to be on the front pages, at least according to Huffington Post. Right? Now, as you know, I'm always surprised that they publish me on the front pages. So I'm constantly writing about stuff that I like and that I'm passionate about and that I think should be read. The quality, just according to Huffington Post, puts me on the front pages. And if I were to get a percentage of the advertising, I would probably get more money than a person who was somehow buried on the back pages and only read by their friends and family.
First of all, let me apologize if you're hearing construction noise in the background. This is real time, and the neighbor is having a major reconstruction of their property done, and I can't control it, and I've got the windows closed, and it's still pretty loud. So if you can hear it, my apologies. Welcome to the real world. Number one. Number two. I accept what you just read, and I hear what you just said. The problem that I have with this is, let's say for a moment they did go with the barter model, if you will, that you would get a percentage of any, clicks from advertising on the pages that you post. And let's say that was, and I'm just using round numbers, $500 a month. Would it hurt their bottom line? Absolutely freaking not.
Right. And I mean, that's the economy we're in now, right? Is everyone with an iPhone thinks they're a photographer. Everyone with a blog thinks they're a journalist, not a writer, not a blogger, a journalist. I actually had a woman who had a WordPress blog, and not WordPress that you put on a server and have an actual domain name, but a WordPress blog that said WordPress.myname.com. And she called herself an investigative journalist because she read things off the internet and came up with an opinion.
Let me give you an example of something. I read an independent report this morning about Asian Americans' attitudes towards a certain presidential candidate who is misogynistic and racist. And it showed that the vast majority of them would not vote for that particular candidate for a variety of reasons, but mostly because of his rhetoric. So I was curious, get a load of that, I was curious, what percentage of the national vote came from Asian Americans? Whether it mattered. Was it like 0.1% of Asian Americans that voted? Well, it was 3%, which is a significant little chunk in the bigger picture because in this election where every vote will count, that 3% could be the margin of difference, right? Fair enough? Okay.
Yeah.
So I post this study, and I said, according to my research, 3% of the national vote is cast by Asian Americans. The second person to post, well, where'd you do your research? Well, online, of course, and, here's the resource. Somebody sent me a private message. Said, well, you need to be careful when you're sourcing. I don't need to be careful when I'm doing anything. I know exactly what I'm doing, Z. And not unlike you, if I need to provide a reference or a link or a cross-reference to something I say, I'm happy to do it. But I don't consider myself an investigative journalist because I have a WordPress.TonyTrupiano.com blog.
Right, which you don't,
I don't want to be a journalist. I want to be a pundit. I want to be a talk show host. I want to be a commentator. I do not want to be a journalist.
Right, and I've gotten people accuse me of journalistic integrity, and I have to tell. I'm like, first of all, I'm not a journalist. I'm not a reporter. I'm a blogger. I'm an opinion guy. I write opinions, and now, that said, most of my opinions are based on fact and statistics, and that's how I form my opinion. But, I have to rely on other people who like numbers, which I don't particularly, to collect those and collect the facts, and then I source those to back up my opinion.
All right. Well, with all that being said, you should still be paid for what you do. Now, I
agree. I think that that was a good model to get going, and I think that once they were sold for 300 and something million, that the writers that stayed with them for a good amount of time should be compensated.
Agreed, and certainly Ariana got her payday. That's for damn sure. So maybe we'll just leave it there. But with that said, and this could be a terribly wrong thing to do, I don't think you and I need to spend any significant time talking about the Bill Cosby trial that starts today, or actually their hearings. It's just not where we live. It's not where we go. It's not a story that neither one of us are following, I don't think, anyway. I know I'm not. But as I was looking up at the television, because I'm always looking at the scroll to see what's going on, which is where I get my breaking news, there's a live picture of Bill Cosby walking into court. And the first thing I think of is pudding. Isn't that wrong?
on many different levels, but apparently also funny.
Well, it's. I'm sorry, but the guy is an icon for Jell-O. It's kind of hard to walk away from that image.
Jell-O right. Pudding.
And frankly, he was very funny, very entertaining, and apparently very horny.
Yeah, and it wasn't reciprocated, but he, decided that he was going to do something about that. Hey, listen, since we're talking about getting paid for work.
Yeah, good entree. I'll listen. Z, go for it.
For those of you that are listening, if you want to find out how you can support us, either financially or, with a pat on the back, in the form of ratings and reviews and subscriptions too. Subscriptions help us a lot, particularly on iTunes. You can go to tndztalk.com where you can click on our support page, and there's a myriad of ways that you can support us. You can also, of course, follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and you can find all the links there. And if you'd like to leave us a voicemail, Tony, do you have that number handy?
Thank you, Johnny. I do. It's 559-898-2551. That's 559-TZ-TALK-1. 559-898-2551. And if you do call that and leave a message, just so you know up front, there is a chance, and a very good one, that your call will be used on the air and may be edited for content.
And of course, on that same page, you can also go to our contact form and write us an email that we may or may not read on the air. Give us a suggestion if you'd like to be a guest on the show. And if you're trying to figure out how to write a really big check, you can contact us that way as well.
All right. I wasn't planning on doing this, and I really, as you know, have been very secretive about a very large portion of my day. But maybe it's time I just come clean. So will you just kind of let me do this, all right? All right.
Yeah.
About 7 weeks ago, because we can't make money doing this, and because sometimes the mighty do fall, there was a time where I made a very handsome 6-figure living doing radio. Well, the model has changed, and so has my life exponentially. I have taken a menial job, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, as a line cook at a restaurant where I work 4 to 5 nights a week, sometimes up to 12 hours a day, making less than a living wage, just so I can spend an hour with my friend Richard Zombeck and you folks on a daily basis. I'm tired. I'm 55 years old. I've owned 3 restaurants, and I have become literally a cook for part of my shift and a dishwasher at the end of it. I'm tired of it, and it's not beneath me, but it certainly is not fitting for my experience, in my opinion, or my intellect. And because of the lack of financial support from people that I do know that listen to this podcast on a daily basis, I will continue to have to work a menial job. And frankly, this is what I'm facing, Richard Zombeck, today. It is going to be 85 degrees here in the Detroit area. I will go to work wearing a full chef's regalia, which means I will be wearing fairly heavy clothes. I will be working in a kitchen that will be at least 100 degrees for an extended period of time. I will get home at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to sleep 4 hours to get up to do this podcast tomorrow morning. Well, that and because the dog will have to pee. And that'll get me up as well. I just don't think it's right or fair. But you know what? Things in life aren't always right, and they're rarely fair. But it sure would be nice to be able to do this full time. And I won't be referencing this every day and probably won't be bringing it up again. But frankly, I'm a little pissed off this morning.
Yeah, I'm with you. I worked in the restaurant business as well. And I didn't cook. I waited tables and really can't go back to doing that because there's always a 20-year-old that's going to run circles around me. I also worked in the tech industry, writing documentation, which apparently nobody cares about or needs anymore because there's, someone in the Philippines or India that will write it for $2 a day, and which is fine. I mean, our global economy is raising the middle class elsewhere in the world. But in the meantime, if you've ever read a tech document, good luck.
Well, first of all, Donald Trump will solve your problems, so you don't need to. Yeah,
well,
you don't
I
need
know.
to worry about that. Number two, you've just soft pedaled the really heavy lifting you've done over quite an accomplished career, only to see it stolen really by U.S. policies and trade agreements that allowed this kind of stuff to happen. Listen, no one owes us anything that we aren't willing to earn. Would you agree with that? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm willing to earn every freaking penny I make, as are you. And in fact, I'm willing to earn the pennies I don't make. And I think I've proven that throughout the course of my career. There were times in radio that I made little or nothing, or next to nothing, and continued to do it. It's caused great harm to my personal relationship with my wife. It has been very difficult from a social aspect. I can't begin to tell you how many times friends were going somewhere, regaling something, and I had to lie about why I couldn't go because I didn't have $20 to spend. And I certainly wasn't going to admit that to anybody. I have sacrificed a great deal in the name of democracy, especially progressive democracy, and certainly have not been rewarded in the way that I feel I should have been. It never stopped me. It didn't affect my work ethic. It certainly didn't affect where I showed up and when I showed up and what it cost me personally or financially. I've always been there for those that needed me. That door just hasn't always swung back very well.
Yeah, I found the same thing, and I still, I still have people contact me because they see, and this was kind of the hope, right? Was that I would write on Huffington Post. It would get the quote unquote exposure for me to possibly get a little bit of compensation for it. And to this day, after 6 years, literally on the front pages of Huffington Post, I still get people contact me to write for their crappy little blogs and say, we'll give you exposure.
We'll give you a link. We'll give you a link back.
Yeah. There are 37 million people who read Huffington Post. It's read more than the New York Times. And, apparently, I don't know. I mean, I know if we were to get comments or emails from people, I would venture to guess that we're not going to be getting any pity. In fact, I've heard it all before. Well, you made bad choices. Well, you didn't, plan your life right. If you had just done this, if you had just done that, if maybe you had And I'll tell you something, Tony. I have a father who went to MIT got his PhD in physics, was an astrophysicist, worked for NASA, was actually the project scientist on Skylab, and designed the X-ray telescope on Skylab. And if he were coming out of school right now with the same degree, he would probably be having a hard time finding a job.
Right,
now.
And I'm going to guess that that job that he had, although was very good and the income was very steady, it was not commensurate with his intelligence or experience. Would I be correct? Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, Z, I'm not looking for pity, and I don't want a lecture. I'll take it because I get them all the freaking time. I want money. I want people to pony up $5 a month. I don't want people's pity. I want to get out of this job. And the only way for that to happen is for people to send money. I can't wait to see how you write up today's show, by the way. I don't want pity. You don't want pity. What I want is an affirmation that what we're doing matters to someone. And sometimes the way to show that vote, and we are giving people a couple options. Number one, to contribute financially, which people should seriously consider doing. Number two, by rating us on iTunes. How hard could this possibly be? And in fact, it's so maybe convoluted that you produced a small video on how to do it, not to insult people's intelligence, but because Apple doesn't make it easy for you just to click and do it. So you provided a very simple tutorial for people. So do I want someone's sympathy? No. Do I want their pity? No. Will I take their lecture? Absolutely. Love the lectures, okay? Because I need to be reminded of the decisions that I didn't or did make. At the end of the day, what I really want is their money. And why not just be honest about that? Everybody else is. You know, you and I often talk about not being good self-promoters. That ends today. I'm tired of it. And I'm not going away. Even if we do it for free for another 5 years, I'm not going anywhere. But I do want to get paid to do it. Oh, and by the way, the people that are listening to this, chances are close to 100% of them get paid to do what they do.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is talk about us. You know, tell your friends. If you're enjoying the show, have your friends and family listen to it. Share us on Facebook. Share us on Twitter. Insist that people listen to the show that you enjoyed, and that'll get us more listeners, and that'll raise our chances of making money. Now, you know, we don't want a show full of advertising, but you know, if we reach a certain quota per month or amount of listeners, and this gets out, and you know, we can afford to do a 2 or 3 minute ad in the middle of the show, or at the beginning of the show, or at the end of the show, and then you don't have to listen to us bitch about not making any money.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't know. There may always be some semblance of we want more, because heck, who doesn't want more? But we'll leave it alone for now. We've now spent literally half the show between this and, well, doesn't matter. Let's move on. I want to ask you a question. As you know, Donald Trump yesterday sent out an army of people to attack Bill Clinton on such outdated accusations that it's funny. Of course, Sean Hannity took the bait. There's no question that he did, and I would have expected him to, because, frankly, that's who Sean Hannity is. With that said, it is being reported widely this morning that Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, former chairman of the DNC, very close associate of the Clintons, is now being investigated by the FBI for illegal campaign contributions. I happen to think there's a connection there. Now, maybe it's just my Democratic paranoia in a hyperdrive, and I realize the FBI didn't open this investigation yesterday. Investigations don't happen immediately. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's a terrible coincidence that on the day that Bill Clinton is being ravagely attacked by the pro-Trump people, that the close Clinton ally and current governor of Virginia is also now making headlines in the news.
A very close Clinton ally.
Well, yeah, and I said yesterday in full disclosure, Terry McAuliffe is someone that I got to know very well when he was chair of the DNC. I'm sorry, did I interrupt you drinking your tea?
It was coffee, but yes. I haven't, I don't know. I've seen what's going on. I haven't, dug really deeply into it because it's kind of like, oh yeah, okay. Let's see how this shakes out. And, I think, Tony, I wouldn't be surprised if there were corruption. I wouldn't be disappointed. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of crap that's going on in our political system right now, and how one side thinks the other side is incredibly corrupt. And look at Trump followers. He doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to release his taxes. He doesn't have to treat women fairly. He can be racist and bigoted and
doesn't have to tell the truth.
Right. And still they will say, oh, look what Bill Clinton did. It's like, well, how does that work? Really, how does that work? I'm flabbergasted. I really am that we, I don't know, maybe just that people are such freaking morons. I don't get it sometimes. I just don't get it.
I have to, let me just go for a minute, go back. Certainly one of your claims to fame was the investigative work you did around mortgage foreclosure, subprime loans, etc. News broke yesterday that Trump benefited financially in a massive way when the housing bubble burst. And in fact, there's an audio recording of him out there basically saying, the worse the housing industry gets, the better it is for Donald Trump. Well, he's not alone. There are a lot of wealthy people that experienced great fortune. And in fact, it's still happening in Detroit. The gentleman that is the president and founder of Quicken Loans, Dan Gilbert, has bought now over 80 properties, major business properties in the city, and countless amounts of property in the city proper, but not necessarily downtown. The Chinese government has purchased hundreds of properties that they're sitting on. Why? Because they had the money to do it. Could they have done it when the markets were robust? They wouldn't have, right? Because there would have been no profit motive then. So I don't know that I'm going to criticize Donald Trump for being an opportunist from a business perspective. What I will criticize is the way that he expressed himself during that downturn, where literally hundreds of thousands of Americans who you were trying to defend, Richard Zombeck, were being forced from their homes because they were given loans illegally.
11 million.
Thank you.
11 million people were in foreclosure. And what we had was people, regular, normal people, and people in Congress and politicians, and people, of course, working for the banks, that said this was due to irresponsible homeowners. This was because people bought more house than they could afford. This was because people were irresponsible. Imagine that, Tony. 11 million people collectively got irresponsible and bought more house than they could afford.
Well, so when we take a look at somebody like, you know what? I need to stop. I just literally got an email that my email address has won 11 million euros. I think my problems are over. Do you know how many of those I get every day?
Is it from a prince in Nigeria?
You know, him and many others, my dearly beloved in Christ. Whenever I see that, my junk mail folder literally gets 2,000 of those a day. And I'm not exaggerating. And the worst part is I have to actually go through my junk mail folder because there are 2 people that email me that end up in there, and I don't know why. And I can't get it to stop. And so and they email me fairly regularly, and they send me good information, and I want it. And anyway, the point of my, bringing all this up is that I am, and so are you at some level, just flabbergasted by the lack of common sense in the electorate on the right-hand side of the aisle. We'll get to the left-hand side in a moment. But on the right-hand side of the aisle, the Republicans, or those that claim to be, or those that are recently minted Republicans, or those libertarians that have now crossed into mainstream politics to vote for Donald Trump, or who say they're going to vote for Donald Trump. At the end of the day, Z, and you look at the team that he's assembled, we're going to get to some audio here in a moment. In any other political year, and again, I've been doing this now 24 years, Donald Trump would have been gone months ago. Months ago.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he wouldn't have even made it. And speaking of, well, no, I was gonna bring up something from a conversation yesterday that Steve Kornacki he made a really good point. But
what number was involved?
Well, now I've kind of got to, now that I've dug myself into this hole, one of Clinton's campaign workers was on with him, pointing out that, Hillary had way more people voting for her than Trump had, right? That the numbers of people voting, that had voted in the primary, that the number of people that she had was far higher than what Trump had. And Steve Kornacki just kind of casually, and it may have missed the mark, but what he said was, yeah, but Trump was also running against 16 other people. And that little insight, that little comment really scared the crap out of me, because he's absolutely right? Is that all those people that voted for the other 16 candidates are probably pretty likely to vote for Trump.
Well, I can throw a little wrench into that if you want me to.
I would love you to, right, because I'm terrified right now.
And you shouldn't be. If we look exponentially at the numbers, a great many more, and I don't have the percentages in front of me. Steve Kornacki might, but I don't have the numbers in front of me. There were a lot more Republicans that turned out for the primaries than Democrats. A lot more. I mean, significantly more. And so, he wasn't always running against 16 other people. And in the larger states where Trump was absolutely massively successful, he certainly wasn't running with 16 other people, number two. Number three, if we factor in the fact that there were a lot more Republicans that voted than Democrats in the primaries, I believe that Donald Trump's base number, based on the research I did, All Clear Politics Average, etc., is 29% of the electorate. Hillary Clinton's, and we'll get to Bernie Sanders in a moment, Hillary Clinton's base number right now is at 46%. Screw what the polls have to say. Okay? These are based on real numbers. Polls can be cherry-picked. You and I both know that. And even Nate Silver has been wrong a lot during this primary process.
A lot.
And he's embarrassed by it. And he's actually been very upfront about that. So with that said, Donald Trump has reached, I think, his max. Now, once we have a real nominee on the Democratic side, I think that we'll see any groundswell of support dissipate very quickly for one Donald J. Trump. Very quickly. Especially if he continues to surround himself with surrogates that absolutely sound ridiculous, that are not agreeing with him, that are rewriting his words for him. There was a member of Congress, and I don't remember who it was the other day, that said, "Oh, he's not going to build a real wall. It's going to be a virtual wall."
Yeah, I love that. Listen, I if it's okay with you, I do want to get to at least one of the audio pieces that we have, and the one with Ann Coulter, because she says some things in there that are telling.
The Tony Dodger. She's the Tony Dodger.
I hate to say this, but she seems to have tapped into the mentality of the Trump supporter.
She is the mentality of the Trump supporter. Go for it.
Hillary Clinton's also going after Trump over his refusal so far to release his tax returns. Let's watch this and weigh whether it matters to the average Joe or Jane out there. Does it matter where they release tax returns? Let's watch.
Is there anything Donald Trump's done that you think should be praised?
I think he needs to release his tax returns. The only two we have show that he hasn't paid a penny in taxes. And yet he goes around talking about make America great. You know, that means paying for our military. That means paying for our roads. That means paying for the VA. That means a lot of things. And if you've got someone running for president who's afraid to release his tax returns because it will expose the fact that he pays no federal income tax, I think that's a big problem.
But my question was, there's nothing about his background that is praiseworthy?
We'll find out, because we have to get below the hype. We have to find what the reality is.
And Coulter, do you like the way people, maybe you do this occasionally, totally, utterly frickin' ignore the question? Just, I mean, isn't there anything praiseworthy? It's a cute thing to do, commentators and people always do. Isn't there nothing good you can say about your opponent? And she says, he should release his taxes. Well, there's a non sequitur. Anyway, what do you think? What's better for Trump? I think he thinks it's better not to release him than to release him because it's his decision. He must feel there's something there, or think that if he releases it, it'll be more news, bad news for him than if he just holds out. What do you think?
I think the reason he says he won't release them is the reason he won't release them. He's under an audit, and for people to go around and say, oh, but it's legal for you to release them. Well, yeah, okay, somebody charged with murder. It's legal for him to go out and talk to the press. I'm pretty sure his lawyer is going to tell him not to. So if he releases his taxes, if I could just make this one point, because I don't think I've heard it, what he is doing is releasing every tax attorney in America to pour through his tax returns and do pro bono work for the IRS. Well, why should he?
Every other president has done that, including Dick Nixon when he was under audit. Because you can tell whether he's hiding money offshore, whether he gives money to charity.
Exactly. Why should he?
Okay, so that's good. You want a crook in the White House? That's fine, Ann. You can go ahead and do that. We don't know if he's a crook or not. We don't know what his connections are. We do not know what his finances are.
He's not running for president.
You know, he is running for president. Every other president
I promise you his supporters
he has said in the past he would. And there's no reason not to do it because there's an audit, because he's already handed it over to the IRS.
Politicians is if they got something that looks worse than it, if it looks better than it is, they leave it quiet. If it's better than it looks, they'll show you the stuff.
Yeah,
I don't think that's true here. I don't think that's true. Taxes are complicated.
To hide, then why not?
Okay, let's see if you're consistent, because nobody is. Let me ask you that. Apparently Jane Sanders is busy going over the taxes of Bernie Sanders for the last 10, 20 years, all right? She hasn't gotten them done yet, according to him, because otherwise he would put them out. Jane's working on them. Now, I don't know what tax, what do you call them, extensions they got going, but, I mean, it's over. So do you believe his explanation that Jane's busy doing the paperwork for the family? Do you think he's right? Just like Trump, you believe Trump? Or you only believe Trump, not Sanders?
Are you talking to me?
Of course I am. I am.
Yeah,
Don't pull that one.
I'm not really that into the tax returns of any of them. I did want to see Bill Clinton's medical report. That was the first time we didn't see a president's medical report. And I didn't see this enthusiasm from David Corn to demand Bill Clinton's medical report. But I really don't think we know he's a wealthy man. I don't think his supporters care.
Do you want to know what Bill Clinton's health records are personally?
Me?
Yeah.
He's not president anymore. I did before he was president, but he refused to release them. He was the first president to refuse to release them.
Okay, you're being coy. Why would you think he wouldn't do that?
No, I'm not. Why? Oh, good grief. Everything Trump is talking about. I want to know how many venereal diseases he has.
So we should get Trump's.
There you go.
So we should also get Trump's medical records, according to Ann.
Yeah.
Maybe his psychiatric hospital.
Remember, we got that. Psychiatric hospitals. We got that fantastic report.
We got one piece of paper from a doctor. That's not his medical records. That's a doctor who signed a piece of paper.
Okay, let me ask you.
Very healthy.
They don't care. Right?
I guess if I would unmute my microphone, you could hear me. Yowza.
That's all right. It's a podcast.
I'm having some problems with my microphone right now, but I think we're okay, right? Okay.
We're okay.
Unfortunately, I stopped recording on my end, but we'll just continue to play this game. Ann Coulter, I called her the Tony Dodger, right? Twice I was scheduled to interview her. Twice, literally within 5 minutes of the interview, she canceled.
Beautiful.
That's our Gail.
You gotta love. But so here's the thing, right? Here's what I got from this: is she's absolutely right. They don't care. They will fight to the death to see Hillary's tax returns, to insist that Bernie releases tax returns, to that Clinton gets DNA swabs, that this has to be, and then Trump is asked for his taxes by George Stephanopoulos, and his response is, it's none of your business. And his followers go, right on. None of it, because they don't want to know, Tony. They don't want to see what's in there. They don't want their illusion to be dashed. They don't care. They really, I don't know that so much that it's they don't care, it's that they don't want to know. What do you think?
And Z, if you can hear me, I'm having some issues hearing you, but I'm working on that on my end, and I know it's on my end.
Okay, so apparently we've had a little bit of technical difficulties and some speaking difficulties as well. And I will more than likely be cleaning this up in the podcast so that the rest of you who are listening don't have to suffer. Once again, if you go to TNZ Talk, tnztalk.com, you can figure out how to support us, how to friend us, how to follow us. How to contact us is all there at TNZ Talk. And for Tony Tripiano, I'm Richard Zombeck. And as Tony likes to say at the end of every show, we wish that you be well.
Oh yeah, can you feel it? Just over the credits, just riffing now. Words and chords. Not the poetry and the real thing, but not bad for an ad-lib. Not good, but... And it's not long enough, so just do a little bit more. And that's nearly done. That's the final credit there. That's the end.